a great opportunity to talk to Analyst from ESPN College Football. Was on the call with Brad Nessler. Always does a fantastic job. ESPN's Todd Blackledge joining us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Todd, it's Vince Ferrara. Good morning. How are you, Todd?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're great. Todd, you mentioned I've referenced what you said at the start of the broadcast. Went back and watched it, and you said at the start of the broadcast, big-time players make big-time plays in big games. Right. Alabama did it. Tennessee did not. If Tennessee plays much better with its stars, they have a shot in that game against Alabama.
Well, I think so, because I think there was a point in the game, up to about the midway point of the third quarter, where as much difficulty as the Tennessee defense has had this season, they had played well enough to that point to give them a chance. And, they were within striking distance, and there were a couple possessions in a row where Tennessee had good field position and, could have made it interesting at that point. And they weren't able to capitalize. And then, then the defense had a few more breakdowns from that point on, and then they were, then they couldn't catch them. But there was a point, again, up to about midway point of the third quarter where if Tennessee's off could have responded and put a touchdown and a field goal on the board, it could have gotten a whole lot more interesting for sure.
Joined by ESPN college football analyst Todd Blackledge here on the new Sentinel Sports page, and Vince Ferrara. Todd, what do you see from Tyler Bray? Is it between the ears? Is it his mechanics letting him down? Is it something else? What do you see as a former quarterback in Tyler Bray?
Well, I think he's very talented, first of all. I think sometimes, and this is not uncommon for guys like Tyler who have arm talent. I think sometimes they think they can make any throw, whether their mechanics are good or not. And the problem is it's easier to get away with those kind of things against inferior teams than it is against really good teams. And so I think sometimes that gets him in trouble. There's a little bit of a breakdown in his mechanics. I think sometimes he, maybe tries to force things and make all the, every big play. And sometimes I think he just kind of loses his focus mentally, and so when he's on and when he's locked in, he's really good. And unfortunately, he's just had too many times in some critical games and critical points in games where he hasn't been able to quite keep it all together, whether it's mentally or physically.
Do you sense enough on-field leadership with this Tennessee team?
Well, I think they probably have enough. I mean, you're always looking for, those alpha dog kind of guys,
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. When I visited with Nick Saban on Thursday, that's one of the concerns he had for his team. He says, we don't really have that guy. We don't have a Dante Hightower. We don't have a Rolando McClain like we've had in the past, that when they stand up and talk, everybody in the room listens. And so, every coach on every team is looking for those kind of guys. And, when you're winning and when things are going well, it's a little easier, to get by without some of that. But I'm not a big rah-rah guy. I just think guys have to step up and play and lead by the way they play, by the way they work, and how consistently they do it.
Joined by ESPN college football analyst Todd Blackledge here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Todd, when you visited with Derek Dooley this leading into that game, did you get a sense for where he is right now in terms of his optimism of his team? Because a lot of the fans are talking about, and the media as well, his job status moving forward. Right. Did you get a feel for how optimistic he is about his team?
Well, I did. I mean, I didn't get he didn't really talk about his own job status or job security, and I wouldn't have expected him to. He's got his nose to the grindstone like every coach does at this point in the year. The one thing he did say, and I think he was very sincere in it, he said he loves his team, and he loves the resiliency of his team. And even though, going into that game, they hadn't been able to beat those upper echelon SEC teams, he really enjoys the football team and enjoys the temperament of it and the, the resolve of it. And so I think he was very sincere in that. And obviously he felt more comfortable with where they were offensively than where they were defensively at this point in the season. But, there's still a lot of football games left to be played.
Can you fix some of the issues that Tennessee has had defensively with missed assignments and tackling, things like that? Is that something that you think can be improved on considerably during a season?
Well, I think some of the things you can do, and I think that they did this. I mean, noticeably they did this in the Alabama game. I think some of it you can improve by simplifying. It's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because if you get too simple and an offense, can expect, what you're going to do, then they can create some matchups that can give you some problems. And so, that's kind of a fine line with that. But I do think that by simplifying, you get guys in the right spot, you get them lined up, and then you hope that their technique can kick in and they can win some one-on-one battles and play within the integrity of the scheme and make plays. And again, I think I saw a lot more out of Tennessee's defense in that Alabama game than I did when I watched tape of the Mississippi State game or of the Georgia game or, of course, the Florida game that I was at. It may not reflect that in the final analysis or the final stats, but through longer stretches of that game Saturday night, I thought the defense was much more sound and played much more physically than they had in some earlier games.
Todd, how much of those defensive struggles do you attribute to the transition to the 3-4, and how much of it is just basic fundamental football things that players should know?
Well, obviously when you have transition and you have a new scheme and a new coordinator and then, some different aspects of the system, I mean, it takes time. And you can say, well, they had a whole spring, they had all of August, but that, you got to start playing games. You got to start going against live competition to where you see, where you're really at. And I think, and I made this comment on the air too, it's not just a matter of how much of the system South and Siri knows or the defensive coaches. It's a matter of how much can the players absorb, and how much can they process and then play fast. Because you have to play fast on defense in this league. And I think that's, there's a learning curve with that. There's a learning curve with the players. I think there's a learning curve with Sal as a first-time coordinator and with coaches of saying, okay, we got to find a happy medium here where we can put in stuff to give us a chance, but we also can't put in too much that our guys are thinking too much and not playing fast.
Todd Blackledge from ESPN joining us. Todd, last thing, we appreciate your time. We didn't get a chance, and we miss it, the taste of the town. We miss seeing you devour some huge meals. Where did you –
Well, you know what? I'm not doing it this year. I took a little time off. I am going to bring it back next season. I'm kind of scouting out the territory again, and but I did it for 5 years, and we took a little break this year, but we look to bring it back maybe even as soon as the bowl season to kind of kick it off for the next season.
All right, so where did you dine at in your time in Knoxville?
Well, you know what, I just kind of beat it around a little bit. When I'm in town, I kind of, I always, when I was in Florida, when I came back for the Florida game, I went out to Litton's. I love going back out there to see Barry and Eric. And then we had our crew. We were staying right up there by the Roost Chris Steakhouse, so we went there one night because it was convenient and easy. We had a really nice evening there, too. So always enjoy my time in Knoxville.
Well, Todd, you and Brad, I think a lot of us in the media around here think you guys are the best duo on television, and really appreciate your insights today. Thanks for the time, Todd.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the compliment. Take care.
You're welcome. That is Todd Blackledge from ESPN.